The drowning silence. The research facility on Terra 17 drifted in quiet isolation, orbiting a forgotten moon where stars flickered like tired lanterns. At night, the corridors echoed with low hums of unused machinery, blinking red lights, marking status reports that no one checked anymore. Most personnel had left months ago. The science teams reassigned, the alien biology experiments suspended after a funding cut. What remained was a skeleton crew and Ethan Cale, a 32-year-old systems technician, who preferred machines over conversations. Ethan's shift usually ended with a silent walk across the outer courtyard. It gave him space to think, though lately he'd been thinking about quitting. The sky above the dome was always filled with the same dead stars, and the tasks were repetitive, but tonight felt off. The hallway was unusually still, not the comfortable quiet of solitude, more like the hush. Before something unexpected, he wandered past the old aquatic testing wing, now sealed off and forgotten. The pool used for testing non-terrestrial aquatic life had been drained, refilled, and abandoned so many times its sensors rarely worked. A rusted warning sign still stood crooked at the entrance. Caution, experimental depth pool, restricted access. Ethan paused, his boot clicking on the grated walkway. Something tickled the edge of his hearing, then dash splash. He spun. The sound wasn't loud, but in a place this still, even a drop echoed. He waited. The pool below, shadowed and seemingly lifeless, had ripples stretching across its surface. The air stilled around him. There was no wind, no wildlife on this moon, and no staff left who would be messing around at this hour. His heart began to race, not from fear, but something else, instinct. He stepped closer, gripping the cold railing. Suddenly, something broke. The water's surface, a hand small, almost skeletal, silver in color, flashed up, fingers twitching in desperation before vanishing again beneath the dark water. Without thinking, Ethan threw off his jacket, kicked off his boots, and leaped into the pool. The cold hit like an electric shock. His breath caught as he plunged deep into the icy silence. The pool was larger than he remembered, deeper too, built to mimic alien aquatic environments. It descended further than standard pools. Ethan kicked hard, eyes wide open, scanning the murky depths. Something shifted below, tangled movement, thin limbs caught in strands of mesh. He reached out, heart pounding. It was a girl. Or something like a girl. She was tiny, barely the size of a child, with smooth blue-silver skin that shimmered like moonlit glass. Her limbs were thin and weightless, floating helplessly. A tangle of what looked like plastic netting clung to her, and around her neck a collar, metal, blinking faint red. Her eyes were closed. Ethan wrapped an arm around her and pushed upward, lungs burning. As they broke the surface, he gasped, sucking in air, pulling her limp form up with him. He dragged her onto the cold deck, laying her gently on the ground. Her body was unnaturally cold, skin nearly translucent. Up close, she looked even younger, her features soft and unfamiliar, alien but hauntingly fragile. He had no idea what species she belonged to. His training had included basic xenorescue, but that barely scratched the surface of what to do when your patient had gills, bioluminescence, or no circulatory system. But she had lungs, he was sure of it. And right now she wasn't breathing. Ethan tilted her head, gently pressing on her chest and beginning compressions. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on, breathe." He counted seconds in his head, every beat feeling longer than the last. His palms moved carefully, watching for even the faintest twitch. Then cough. Water sputtered from her mouth as her small body jerked. Her eyes blinked open, wide, silver, and glowing softly. She stared at him in shock. He sat back, relief washing over him. "You're okay," he said, hands raised in a calming gesture. "You're safe." But she didn't understand. She screamed. It wasn't a loud scream, but a high, whistling cry that sounded more like a bird in pain than a child. She twisted, trying to crawl backward, her limbs flailing weakly. "Wait, no, it's okay. I won't hurt you." Ethan kept his distance. Kneeling, she trembled, eyes darting between him and the dark water behind her. Her hand reached for the collar on her neck. It blinked again, this time with a soft pulse of red and yellow. Then Ethan noticed the tag, Unit 918. No name, no ID, just a number. His stomach turned. She wasn't just lost, she was labeled, classified, tagged. He slowly pulled off his hoodie and held it out. She recoiled at first, but when he placed it gently beside her, she stared at it, eyes wide. After a moment, she curled into it, shivering. Her eyes never left his, but the fear started to dull, replaced by something else, confusion. Ethan sat beside her, careful not to make sudden movements. I don't know what happened to you, he whispered, but you don't have to be afraid anymore. She didn't speak. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe her species had no spoken language. Or maybe she'd simply forgotten how to trust words. The silence stretched. Finally, Ethan stood. He glanced around. No cameras, no patrols. The base was a ghost town. He knew of an old utility storage room near the engineering sector, disused, locked, forgotten by most. He walked back to the girl. I'm taking you somewhere warm, he said. She didn't answer. He bent down and lifted her gently. She weighed almost nothing. Her skin felt like cool marble beneath his arms. As he carried her through the dim corridors, Ethan felt something shift deep inside him. He didn't know who she was, or why she'd been left to drown, but one thing was certain. He would not leave her behind. Not now, not ever. A name in the dust. The utility storage room was buried in the forgotten guts of the facility, behind a rusted door, under flickering lights, and past old crates of obsolete equipment. It smelled like dust and old metal, but Ethan had cleaned it up months ago when he needed a quiet place to think. It was a place no one visited anymore, and tonight, it was the only safe place left for the alien girl. He laid her gently on a bundle of cloth and thermal blankets. The room had no camera feeds, no sensors that still worked. A single old light panel above flickered weakly, casting warm amber hues that softened the harsh metal walls. She sat hunched, knees drawn to her chest. Ethan's hoodie wrapped tightly around her. Her glowing eyes tracked every movement he made, not with fear anymore, but with deep, guarded caution. Ethan crouched down and opened a small container, pulling out a water pouch. You need this, he said softly, holding it out to her. She hesitated. It's not poisoned, he added, with a crooked smile. Trust me, I couldn't poison water if I tried. She didn't understand the joke, but eventually, she reached out with both hands, fingers trembling slightly, and took the pouch. She drank slowly, sips so small they barely dented the surface. Good, Ethan murmured. That's good. He sat beside the crate, exhausted. The silence settled between them again. But it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was tense, yes, but now it had purpose. The kind of silence that exists between two people who know something important just happened, even if they can't yet speak of it. Ethan looked at her collar again. The red light had dimmed but not gone out. He reached toward it slowly. She recoiled. Sorry, he said, pulling his hand back. I won't touch it if you don't want me to. Her breathing was shallow, still unsteady, and Ethan realized something else. She was young, not just in appearance. The way she flinched, how she looked at walls instead of people, how her hands moved like she was always expecting a strike. It told a story no words could. She had lived in fear. Ethan pulled out a thermos from his bag and poured some soup into a small cup. I don't know what your people eat, but it's better than nothing. She didn't respond. He placed the cup on the ground between them and gently nudged it closer with a soft clink. She sniffed the steam, then looked up at him, uncertain. It's okay, he whispered. You're safe here. After a long pause, she picked up the cup and drank. Tiny, slow gulps. Ethan watched her as if she might disappear if he blinked. Her skin shimmered in the dim light, like she was made of water and starlight. But beneath that beauty was something else, a deep, bone-heavy kind of weariness. My name's Ethan, he said quietly. She tilted her head. He pointed to himself. Ethan, she stared. He repeated it, slower. Ethan, she pointed to him. Yeah, he nodded. That's me. Then, slowly, hesitantly, she raised a hand and touched her own chest, but she didn't speak. Instead, her fingers went to the collar again. Unit 918. He shook his head. No, that's not your name. She blinked. That's just what they called you. That's not who you are. He stood and looked around for something. Chalk, a pen, anything, but found only a patch of dust on the metal floor. He knelt down and used his finger to write, Ether, and then pointed to himself again. She watched intently. Then, slowly, she lowered herself to the floor, using a trembling finger to trace her own shapes beside his letters. It wasn't writing, it was symbols. Waves, spirals, 3 tiny circles in a triangle, then a fish-like swirl. Ethan watched in fascination. It wasn't random. She was telling him something. She tapped her drawing and then tapped her chest. That's your name? He asked softly. She nodded once. He stared at it, memorizing every curve. All right, he said. Then I'll call you. He paused. The swirl reminded him of currents, the waves, the fish. Everything led back to one word. Ocean. She blinked. He pointed to the drawing. Ocean. She stared at him for a long moment. Then the faintest smile tugged at her lips. For a second, just one heartbeat of time, the fear lifted. She didn't look like a test subject or a prisoner or even an alien. She looked like a girl finally being seen. Then the silence shattered. Footsteps, voices, someone was in the hallway. Ethan's heart slammed into his ribs. He rushed to the door, cracked it open. Two figures walked by in black and grey armor, their boots sharp against the metal floor. Inspectors, no too quiet, too methodical. Their shoulder badges weren't from the science division. They were retrievers, hunters. Ethan's breath caught. He turned quickly and rushed to Ocean. "We have to hide you," he whispered. She didn't understand the words, but his tone was urgent enough. He pulled open a floor panel near the old wiring maintenance shaft. It led into a crawl space, tight, dusty, but hidden. He pointed down. "You'll be safe here." Ocean looked at the dark space and trembled. Ethan nodded. "I'll stay nearby. I won't let them take you." She slowly climbed down, wrapping the hoodie tighter around her. Before Ethan closed the panel, she reached up and touched his hand again. Just a second, but it said everything. Then she disappeared into the dark. Ethan closed the panel just as the door clicked open. A deep voice called, "Facility suite." In here, Ethan stepped out from the shadows. "Casual, just old junk in here," he said. "Nothing worth sweeping." The two men glanced around but didn't enter. One gave him a long look. "Be careful, some sectors are under audit. We're tracking anomalous signatures." Ethan nodded, keeping his face neutral. "You'll be the first to know if I see anything." They left, and Ethan locked the door behind them. His pulse thundered in his ears. His hands trembled, not with fear but conviction. Whatever Ocean was, whoever had tried to drown her, she wasn't just some lab creature. She was alive, thinking, feeling, and she was finally more than a number. She had a name now, and someone who wouldn't give her up, not ever. Learning to breathe-a-thon barely slept that night. The cold metal floor beneath him didn't matter. The hum of distant machinery and the soft clinks of temperature regulators couldn't distract him. His thoughts kept drifting back to the girl, hiding just a meter beneath his feet. Every minute, he imagined the panel creaking open, retrievers storming in, or worse, her trying to escape, thinking he was like the others who'd caged her. But morning came with no alarms, just silence. When the first rays of artificial daylight buzzed through the hallway strips, he opened the hidden panel. Ocean was still there, curled in a blanket like a child hiding from the world. Her silver blue skin shimmered in the dim light, her eyes blinking slowly. She wasn't afraid anymore, just tired. Ethan reached down. "It's okay. They're gone." She stared at his outstretched hand, then slowly took it, her tiny fingers cool and hesitant. He helped her up and guided her back into the storage room. The dust had settled. The faint warmth of the radiator kept the room from freezing. Ethan handed her another water pouch and then sat near the wall, running fingers through his messy hair. "I don't know what I'm doing," he muttered aloud. "I'm not a hero. I fix wires, calibrate sensors, and now I'm harboring." He looked at her, someone who was never meant to be found. Ocean didn't respond, but her gaze locked on his face, like she was trying to understand him, not his words, but his feelings. Her eyes reflected more than light. They reflected depth. As she sipped from the pouch, Ethan pulled a small tablet from his satchel and opened a few offline programs. Wanted to find a way to communicate. He sketched a human figure, labeled it Ethan, then turned it toward her. She studied it, then slowly pointed. "Yes," he nodded. "Me." Ocean knelt down beside him. With a finger, she erased part of the sketch and redrew the head with wavy lines, hair, just like his. Then she looked up at him and tilted her head slightly. He smiled. "You're not bad at this." Then, beneath his drawing, she drew another figure, small, long fingers, large eyes, fins on the sides of the head like folded gills. She pointed to it and then to herself. "You," Ethan said. "Ocean." She blinked and then, very softly, repeated, "Ocean." He froze. His heart skipped a beat. "Was that your voice?" Ocean looked down quickly. Her hand returned to the drawing. "No, it's okay," he said gently. "That was beautiful." Her lips tightened, and she curled inward like she regretted it. Ethan realized the sound of her own voice might have been forbidden for a long time. He drew again, this time symbols, stars, planets, lines, connecting them. Then he tapped on the corner of the tablet, activating a static-filled map of the local sector. "Where?" he asked. "Where are you from?" Ocean's expression changed. Her eyes focused. Slowly, she reached over and pointed to a zone in the far right corner and mapped Sector 19. The screen glitched for a second. That area was restricted, labeled as uncharted, hostile, uninhabited. Even military crafts avoided it. No ships had returned from that quadrant in decades. "You came from here?" Ethan whispered. She nodded. Then she drew something beside the sector. A spiral with radiating lines. Beneath it, she scratched a jagged X dot. Ethan stared, destroyed. Ocean looked away. Her hand trembled. So her home wasn't just far. It was gone. The realization hollowed his chest. Whatever she'd escaped from, it wasn't just a prison or a lab. It was extinction. A soft knock at the outer facility door jolted Ethan back to reality. He stood quickly, tablet off, drawings erased. Stay here, he whispered. She obeyed, curling up on the floor again as he closed the storage room door quietly behind him. Ethan crossed the hall and peeked through the glass panel of the main entrance. Outside stood a man in military gray, flanked by two quiet, armed officers, not retrievers. Worse, clearance level 9. Central Command. Ethan pressed the door intercom. Morning, can I help you? We detected unusual energy spikes from this facility overnight, the officer said. Near the aquatic testing sector, Ethan forced a casual tone. Could be leftover systems waking up. We've got a lot of tech here that barely works. We'd like to run a scan. Internal and external, the man said, pulling out a palm-sized scanner. Ethan opened the door halfway and stepped outside, trying to block their view. Sure. Just avoid the engineering wing, still cleaning up a fluid leak. Nasty gas exposure risk. The officer narrowed his eyes. Fluid leak, coolant and bioreactive waste, Ethan said with fake authority. Ventilation's down. You can ask Safety Command. We'll confirm, the officer muttered. In the meantime, remain on site. As they stepped away, Ethan's heart pounded harder than any security alarm. He rushed back into the corridor and bolted the door. Ocean hadn't moved, but when he returned, she was on her feet. She held a fragment of her collar in her hand. It was broken. The light no longer blinked. Did you? He started. She looked at him, then whispered again, free. It was like the air changed, like the word itself had weight. Ethan stepped closer. You broke it. She nodded, then tapped the floor, traced the spiral again, and crossed it out. Harder this time. Her home wasn't just gone, it had been erased. Her people hadn't died in war, they'd been hunted, and now she was the last. Something inside Ethan snapped. A quiet vow solidified. No matter what that collar was meant to track, to control, or to silence, it had failed. And no matter who came for her now, they wouldn't succeed either. I'll get you off this rock, he said. I don't care what it takes. Ocean tilted her head again, not confused but curious. You trust me? He asked. She didn't answer, but she stepped closer, just a fraction, and pressed her palm lightly against his chest, then whispered, friend, and Ethan felt the first tear he'd shed in years begin to rise, because that word, from her mouth, meant everything. Echoes beneath the water. The days passed, like whispers in a forgotten corridor. Ethan did his best to appear normal, walking the facility halls, performing meaningless diagnostic checks, waving at passing drones, and nodding at fellow engineers who still lingered in the upper decks. But his mind was always back in that storage room, with her. With Ocean. She remained hidden, mostly silent, wrapped in the soft blue blanket he'd given her. He left food and water during each break, quietly watching her from across the room. But today, something changed. She was standing, not trembling or recoiling, but curious. She had pulled open a small panel in the wall and was gently tracing the metal wires inside, her long fingers moving with a strange elegance. When she noticed Ethan, she didn't back away. Instead, she pointed to the wiring, then gestured to the collar now broken into beside her. You understand that? He asked. She gave a soft nod. Did you disable your collar? Another nod. Ethan sat slowly, watching her as if seeing her for the first time all over again. You're not just some test subject, are you? She tilted her head. You're engineered. Lotion didn't answer in words. She closed the panel, turned to the floor, and began drawing again with her finger in the dust. This time it wasn't just symbols. She drew the aquatic test pool, then under it, a series of spirals, shapes, doorways. Ethan leaned in. That's not just a pool. It's something else, isn't it? She nodded and drew a final symbol in the center, 3 dots in a triangle inside a circle. I've seen that, Ethan whispered. On the restricted architecture files. He stood, heart suddenly racing. Come with me. Ocean hesitated, clutching the blanket close. He reached out, hand open. Trust me. She took it. For the first time they walked side by side. Hiding, no crawling in shadows. They moved quickly through the maintenance corridors, avoiding open surveillance, until they reached the aquatic test chamber. The air inside was dry and stale. The pool shimmered gently, as though it remembered the night Ethan had jumped in. Ocean stepped closer to the edge. She knelt down and placed both palms on the water's surface. Ripples formed in light. A soft glow spread from her hands, forming patterns beneath the water. Ethan stepped back, eyes wide. It wasn't just light. It was language. Symbols moved like fish under glass. Circles, swirls, STARBURSTS. Suddenly, a low hum filled the room. The sensors on the wall blinked to life. One of the old displays activated, flickering before stabilizing on a strange interface completely. Foreign, unreadable, holy. This isn't Terran tech, Ethan whispered. Ocean stood again, eyes glowing. She pointed to the water, then to the stars painted on the ceiling dome. This is a gate, he realized aloud. Or a memory, maybe. Both. She turned to him and made a sweeping motion, like wind moving across waves. Then she traced a line across her throat and tapped her chest. You were hidden here, he said. Put to sleep. Stored beneath this place, like a lockbox. Ocean's hand trembled. Why? He whispered. She stepped away and drew again on the floor tiles with her finger, this time a series of images, a figure like her standing in a circle of taller creatures, then fire raining down, then a sealed vault, and finally a single figure drifting through stars. Alone. You were the last, Ethan said. His voice tight. Ocean looked up at him. Tears shimmered in her glowing eyes, but didn't fall. He crouched beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. I don't know how long you've been here, or who buried you under our feet, but I swear to you you're not alone anymore. Suddenly, an alert buzzed in Ethan's ear. He tapped his cum. Internal security alert, unidentified energy spike sector 6. His heart dropped. They detected her activation. We have to move now. Ocean didn't argue. She stood quickly. Ethan grabbed her hand and led her back through the hallways, but it was already too late. That as they turned a corner near the access stairwell, they saw them. 3 retrievers stall, silent, armored, with scanner visors glowing like suns behind fog. They hadn't spotted them yet. Ethan pulled Ocean back, hiding behind a junction wall. We can't go to the storage room. They'll search it next. He scanned his mind, calculating. Then he remembered the waste shaft tunnels beneath engineering, vents wide enough to crawl through, forgotten since the last environmental update 3 years ago. This way. They dashed down the narrow ladder behind the old fuel cell bank. Ocean kept pace, surprisingly agile. They reached the base of the tunnel. Ethan pried open the maintenance vent, rusted and thick with grime. You sure about this? He asked. Ocean looked at the tight hole, then nodded and crawled in. Ethan followed. Pulling the vent shut behind them, they slid through pipes and wires, through darkness and dust, until they emerged into a space barely taller than Ocean herself. It was cramped and stank of decay and metal, but it was safe. Ethan collapsed against the wall, panting. Ocean sat beside him, breathing evenly, as if none of this fazed her. She's done this before, he whispered to himself. He turned toward her, mind racing. Who are you really, Ocean? Ocean's eyes met his and she finally spoke. I remember. It was the clearest voice he'd heard from her. Soft, melodic, but filled with weight. I was not just lost. I was hidden, she continued, because they feared what I carried. What did you carry? Ethan asked. She touched her chest, awakening. Then she closed her eyes and her skin pulsed with a soft glow. Beneath her palm, the faint outline of a symbol appeared, 3 waves spiraling outward. Not a weapon, not a machine, but a beacon. Ethan stared at her, realization settling in. She hadn't just escaped death, she was the signal, and someone far worse than retrievers might already be listening. The beacon calls. The air inside the tunnel was thick with old dust and metal fatigue. Pipes hissed somewhere above, and every few minutes, the walls trembled gently, like the facility was breathing. But Ethan wasn't focused on the creaking metal, or the silence between security sweeps. He was staring at Ocean. Her skin no longer glowed, faintly it shimmered like deep water under moonlight. Her eyes were closed, but her lips moved, whispering something in a language Ethan couldn't understand. And beneath her palm, the strange symbol that had formed earlier, 3 spirals radiating from a single center still pulsed faintly on her chest. She was more than a runaway, more than a survivor. She was becoming something more. Ocean, Ethan whispered, leaning forward. What does it mean? What's awakening? Her eyes opened slowly. The memory, she said. What memory? She hesitated, searching for words that could fit into a human mouth. Not mine, ours. Then she reached into the dusty bag at her side. He hadn't noticed it before. Perhaps she had hidden it during their flight. From it, she pulled a crystal the size of her palm. It was dull, cracked, but when her fingers touched it, the surface shimmered with liquid light. Patterns flowed Across its surface, like ancient circuitry, it holds what was left, she said softly, of home, of the deeper and deeper. And Ethan echoed, that's your people. She nodded once. Born of the deep, carriers of the silent flame. He had never heard of them, not in the Alliance archives, not in xenobiology logs, nowhere. And yet, she was real, not just folklore, not myth. Ocean placed the crystal on the floor between them. It is broken, she said. Like me. Ethan looked at the crystal's jagged edge. Can it be fixed? She tilted her head slightly. Maybe if we reach the old pool again, it remembers the pool, he asked. How could water remember? Ocean didn't answer. Instead, she began humming softly. The tunnel around them seemed to vibrate in rhythm with her voice, not with sound but resonance. Then, a sharp crack interrupted everything. Come alert, buzzed in Ethan's ear. New transmission, encrypted coordinates, uploaded to central base, retriever unit, Omega inbound. Ethan's blood froze. Omega no, he muttered. That wasn't a recon team. That was a full recovery directive, the kind they sent when something had to be erased. We have to move, he said. Ocean reached for the crystal, holding it tightly. They come for the memory, she whispered. Not me. It is louder now, Ethan understood. The crystal wasn't just a keepsake. It was broadcasting. Somehow, her awakening had sent out a signal, and now the ones who had destroyed her people were listening. He helped her up, brushing grime from her shoulders. We can't hide anymore. If that crystal has any answers, if your people's legacy means something, then we have to finish what they started. Ocean looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. They exited the maintenance shaft and crossed back into the lower labs. The hallways were abandoned, but drones zipped by at far end, scanning, recording, uploading. Ethan knew it was only a matter of time before the crawl space was found, and the signal traced. They had one shot. He guided Ocean back to the aquatic test chamber. The door hissed open, and stale air greeted them once more. But now the pool wasn't still. It shimmered faintly like it was waiting. Ocean stepped forward, crystal in hand. She knelt beside the water and extended the object gently until it touched the surface. Ripples spread out like golden rings. The light in the room dimmed. Even the overheads seemed to flicker and bow before the glow of the water. Ethan stood back, shielding his eyes. From within the pool, a tower of light burst. Upward, silent, brilliant, and filled with symbols. Not static, not artificial. Memories. Images formed in the air of vast oceans on alien worlds. Of cities carved into coral and stone. Of creatures made of light, swimming through starlit seas. A people who spoke not with words but through currents, through motion, through song. Then came fire, massive machines with angular limbs, dark ships descending like predators, oceans boiling, cities burning, and one word echoed through it all: call and harvest. Ocean turned to him. They feared us, not because we fought, but because we remembered, because we chose not to forget. Ethan's chest tightened. That's what they wanted to erase. She nodded. Not just life, but what life could teach. Then the water surged upward, forming a perfect sphere above the pool. Within it, the crystal floated, now whole again, its cracks sealed with pulsing veins of light. Ocean raised her hand and sang, not in fear this time, but in power. The sphere shattered. And in its place, the memory tower remained embedded in the pool like a monument, a beacon. Then the lights in the entire facility blinked red. Alert. Massive energy surge detected. Base lockdown initiated. Ethan turned to Ocean. They're coming. Ocean faced the door calmly. Then let them come. He grabbed her arm. We can't fight them all. She looked up at him. We don't have to. The tower behind her pulsed once. A low hum filled the chamber and the facility answered. Old walls began to shift. Panels unlocked. Doors slid open. Lights flickered into ancient colors not seen by human eyes. This place, Ethan whispered. It's not just a lab. It's Ocean nodded. A vault. A seed. Left behind by those who believed in something more. Then the comes filled with static. A deep synthetic voice echoed through the hallways. This is Retrieval Omega. Step away from the anomaly. Prepare for cleansing. Boots clanged on metal. Drones hovered. The smell of plasma charged the air. Ocean turned back to Ethan. This is not your war, she said. I don't care, Ethan replied. You're not alone, she hesitated. Then I must show you what comes next. And she reached out her hand. When he took it, the memory tower responded. Symbols glowed, spinning around them. A wave of light rushed forward, blinding, warm, alive. The retrievers burst through the chamber doors, but it was too late. The room had already changed. They didn't step into a lab, they stepped into a gateway, Ocean was no longer just a child of the deep, and she was its voice, and its vengeance. The song of the deep. The retrievers halted at the threshold. For a split second, the sensors designed to measure life, motion, and heat went blank. Then, all at once, alarms howled through their internal systems. Warning glyphs danced across their herds as the aquatic chamber's walls melted into something ancient and alive. What had once been a test pool now resembled a massive, glowing basin of flowing starlight. The water rippled not from motion but from memory. It wasn't reacting to gravity anymore. It obeyed something deeper. At the center, Ocean stood, eyes glowing white, arms stretched to the sides. The broken collar that had once chained her now lay in pieces at her feet, forgotten like the lies it represented. Beside her, Ethan staggered back, stunned. The memory tower pulsed with waves of light behind them. Symbols and songs he couldn't understand filled the air, brushing against his skin like wind from another universe. He felt dizzy, overwhelmed, but also grounded by the weight of what he was witnessing. She wasn't summoning power, she was power. The lead retriever stepped forward, weapon raised. His voice rang cold and clinical. Designation, Unit 918. You are under Article 627E. Recovery or erasure. Comply. Ocean didn't move. She merely looked at him with eyes older than time. Ethan stepped forward instinctively, shielding her. She's not your property, he snapped. She's not a number. The retriever didn't hesitate. It raised its arm, aiming a plasma bolt directly at Ethan's chest. Ocean moved first. Her fingers twitched, and the air between them rippled. The plasma bolt fired, but it never reached him. It struck a wall of suspended water that had formed in midair. The water hissed, absorbed the energy, and then split into two streams, each twisting like snakes and slamming into the retriever's chest. The machine staggered back, its armor dented, sparks bursting from its core. The other retrievers opened fire, their bolts lighting the room. But none of them landed. Ocean's arms traced slow rhythmic patterns. With each motion, the water responded as a tool, but as a partner. It danced, flowed, hardened when struck, then lashed back with tidal force. Streams formed blades, shields, and vines of glowing liquid that wrapped around the attackers, neutralizing them without a single kill. She was not waging war, she was protecting. Ethan could hardly breathe. He had seen combat footage before, soldiers, weaponized drones, riot suppressors, but nothing like this. This was grace laced with fury, power shaped not by anger, but by purpose. But within minutes, the last retriever's legs gave out as a coil of water slammed its core against the far wall. It sparked, flailed, then collapsed, silenced. Ocean lowered her arms. The water obeyed, settling gently back into the glowing pool, as if nothing had happened. Ethan stepped toward her. Are you okay? She turned slowly, eyes dimming. Her legs trembled and then she fell. He caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was burning cold to cold. The light that had poured from her just moments before had drained completely. Her breathing slowed. Ocean, he whispered. Hey, stay with me. She blinked slowly. Her lips parted. They heard. Her fingers closed around his wrist weakly. Not machines, not soldiers, the ones who burn. Memory who devour light. Ethan felt his stomach twist. You mean there's more? She nodded, her voice almost a breath. They come now. Ethan looked up at the pool. The memory tower still pulsed gently, but now, it was flickering, like a dying flame. If she had used the last of her strength to stop the retrievers, then whoever she was warning him about, they wouldn't be as easily repelled. He lifted her gently into his arms. I'm getting you out of here. But as he turned, a low rumble echoed through the floor. It wasn't the sound of footsteps, it was a frequency too low for humans to hear, yet somehow still felt in the bones. Ethan's cum crackled again. Transmission received. Non-Terran energy approaching. Orbit. Object class. Oblivion. His mind reeled. Oblivion wasn't a standard classification. It was a code Black used only for threats that couldn't be measured with current technology. Above them, the reinforced dome ceiling groaned as gravity itself seemed to shift. Ocean stirred faintly in his arms. They follow beacons. They erase what remembers. Ethan's jaw clenched. Then we shut the beacon down. She opened her eyes slightly, shaking her head. It's too late. It sang. They heard. They come. What do we do? Her voice was like frost. We run, he nodded once. Well, she pointed toward the pool. Ethan looked confused. Back into the water, she shook her head. Through the water, she motioned toward the memory tower, now glowing faster than before. It's not just memory, it's escape. Realization hit Ethan like a jolt that the tower wasn't only a recording device, it was a key, and the pool beneath wasn't just water, it was a gate. "I'm not leaving you behind," he said firmly. Ocean gave him the faintest of smiles. "I would not ask." The floor vibrated violently. Cracks formed in the chamber walls. Outside, alarms howled as the base's outer defenses were overwhelmed by something descending from orbit. Ethan adjusted his grip, clutching Ocean close, then stepped toward the edge of the pool. "You sure this will work?" She barely nodded. "Better than staying." The water surged upward, welcoming them like old friends. Ethan took one deep breath and stepped forward. The world exploded in light. His body was weightless, then cold, then warm, then nothing. All sound vanished. He floated beside Ocean through a void filled with drifting light, like stars swimming through memory. Then impact. They slammed into metal flooring, the sound of alarms returning in full. Ethan gasped, rolling onto his side. They weren't in the base anymore. They were somewhere else, somewhere older. The air smelled like salt and time. Ocean sat up slowly. Ethan turned in a circle. They stood in a massive circular chamber, walls of stone and metal, covered in glowing glyphs, and at the center another pool, a second tower, but this one wasn't lit. It was dead. Ocean stared in awe. Then she whispered, "This is where it began." And far above, in the stars, the devourers of memory followed. The last echo of her voice, the last deep-born silence in the chamber was different, not the hush of secrecy or the pause before violence, but the silence of reverence. Ethan had never stood in a place that felt so ancient, so deeply buried in time, that even the dust didn't dare settle. The walls were carved in spirals that mirrored Ocean's drawings, symbols, waves, echoes of things no human had ever seen or spoken, and they all led to the dark pool at the center of the floor. Ocean stood beside it, her bare feet trembling slightly against the smooth stone. Her skin no longer glowed. Whatever power she had awakened had burned through her like a wildfire through a dry forest, but she was still upright, still breathing, still determined. "This is where they sang," she whispered. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. "Who, my people?" she said. "The deep-born, the ones who shaped memory into sound, who stored history in water, who used song to seal what should never be unsealed." Her eyes drifted across the glyphs on the walls. This was the last sanctuary. When the devourers came, those who erased the past and silenced the future, we sealed ourselves inside. Not to live, but to wait. Ethan watched her, heart pounding. Wait for what? She turned to him, and for the first time, she looked not like a girl but like someone ancient and burdened, for someone who could carry it forward. The pool remained still, the memory tower cold and inert. The air had weight now. Ethan could feel it in his chest, as if time itself were holding its breath. They had escaped the facility, yes, but not the threat. Above, in the sky far beyond, this hidden sanctuary, the devourers had arrived. No sirens blared here, no lights flashed red, but the ground trembled subtly, rhythmically like a drumbeat from orbit. Something was descending, slowly, purposefully. Ocean knelt beside the pool. She dipped her hand in. Nothing responded. No ripple, no glow. "It's broken," she murmured. Ethan joined her side. "What do you mean?" "It needs harmony," she said. "Balance, a living memory to awaken it." "But I'm incomplete." He blinked. "Incomplete. I lost too much," she said quietly. "When I fled, when I drowned, part of me never surfaced." She reached into her satchel and pulled out the memory crystal again. It now flickered, dim and fading like a heartbeat losing rhythm. Ethan watched it pulse and flicker, then looked at her again. "Is it your memory?" She shook her head. "It's our memory, the deep-born, a collective. What's left of it is inside me." And this, she placed it gently into the center of the pool. Nothing happened. She lowered her head, shoulders heavy. "If I fail now, the deep-born vanish. Everything they knew, forgotten." Ethan looked at the glyphs, the water, the crystal, and at her. He thought of the night he found her in the pool, drowning with no name. He remembered how her hands shook when he first gave her warmth. He remembered the words she whispered after all the chaos. "Friend." He dropped to his knees beside her. "Then maybe you're not supposed to do it alone." Ocean looked at him, startled. He touched the surface of the water with her. "You said it needed harmony, balance. Maybe that's not something you can do without someone else." A moment passed. Then she nodded together. They placed their hands into the pool. The water accepted them. It began to pulse. The tower groaned, then flickered once, twice, then a hum, low, vibrating through their bones. The water lit from beneath. Not in a blaze, but in a soft unfolding like a flower blooming after 1,000 years of waiting. The glyphs on the walls lit in sequence, dancing to a pattern Ethan didn't know but somehow understood. His thoughts weren't just his anymore. He could feel ocean's memories blending with his own. Vast oceans, cities beneath waves, songs, sung to stars, children of the deep learning to shape light into language. He gasped. Ocean was crying now, not in pain, but relief. It remembers, she said. It remembers us. Above them, the tremors grew stronger. The devourers had found the vault, but the pool was ready now. From its center, the tower surged upward, radiating lines of liquid light, and a voice echoed, not Ocean's, not Ethan's, but something older, deeper. Beacon recognized. Vessel synchronized. Deep-born legacy awakened. Then silence again. Ethan blinked, dizzy. The world shifted. The tower cracked open and, inside was a single pod. Not large, not armed, but pulsing with the same light as the crystal. A vessel, a key. Last chance. Ocean stared at it. It's how they escaped. How some reached other stars. I was one, but broken. Ethan touched the side. Then let's fix it. He rushed to the control node and began transferring power from the reserve battery in his portable scanner. Ocean placed her palm on the glyph console. The pod responded with a slow breath-like pulse. Then the ground shook harder. From above, dust fell and then they heard it. The sound wasn't loud but wrong, a hum without emotion. A sound that swallowed other sounds. A frequency designed to silence, not speak. The devourers had breached the outer vault. A shadow spread down the hallway like a fog with no source. Ethan turned. They're coming. Ocean looked at the pod. It's not ready, we'll buy time, Ethan said. I've got EMP charges, motion scramblers, but Ocean stepped in front of him. No, she said. This is my burden. I was made to protect it, but I need you to carry it forward. He froze. Ocean. She pressed a hand to his chest. You gave me a name. You gave me meaning. Now let me give you purpose. No, his voice cracked. We go together. Her smile was so gentle, it hurt. Then remember me. Before he could argue, she stepped forward toward the hallway, toward the devourers. Light formed around her. Water from the pool followed, rising into the air, curling into a cloak of memory and power. She turned once. Tell them. We remembered. Then she vanished into the dark, and the entire vault shuddered. Ethan didn't wait. He leaped into the pod. The door closed. The tower's voice echoed one last time. Memory preserved. Deep-born vessel launched. Goodbye. Then light. Motion. A rush through stars. And silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, he saw Earth. Small. Blue. Home in his hands. The memory crystal still pulsed. Ocean was gone, but she had left behind a legacy, and as he floated in orbit above a world that still believed it was alone in the universe, Ethan knew what he had to do. Remember, share, awaken, because the deep-born were not extinct, they were just waiting to be heard.